Today, the Saudi government says that they are seeking the death penalty for 5 people involved in the murder of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. Now the U.S. is slapping sanctions on 17 Saudi officials who are believed to have been involved in the murder. Joining me now to discuss Dr. Walid Phares, Fox News foreign affairs analyst. Dr. Phares, will this be enough, you think, to push back on global condemnation of this act, or does it not go far enough, particularly when we're slapping sanctions on 17 and only 5 face the death penalty?
I think, Charles, this is a good step because it follows the legal procedure. It's very important to see that the Saudis themselves have a judicial process, and they have indicted a number of people. They're going to have to take them to court, and there will be consequences. And we are intervening here from 2 perspectives. The first one is really legal, because the journalist was a legal permanent resident here, and he had a job, and he was at Washington Post. So it is important that we act, but we have to be careful about the second line, which is political, geopolitical, strategic, because some of the critics want us to go as far as basically changing our policy with regard to Saudi Arabia and Yemen. That is political. We should not venture that far for this case, but we should go as far as we can in terms of legal sanctions. Yeah,
there's no doubt, and President Trump has made it clear on several occasions that their bulwark against Iranian expansionist ideas, the always ever-present threat of global terrorism, rather, and some of the other issues. But again, there's a lot of pressure on this White House with respect to treating this Saudi Arabia with kid gloves, particularly when it comes to Crown Prince Salman. What's going to happen with him? I think that's the central issue. Should he be held accountable in some form or fashion?
The only way to answer that question, Charles, is to follow the legal process, meaning if we go the route of we want to punish the entire regime, including the Crown Prince, to respond to a legal case, then we're going to open a Pandora box. What we can do is follow the legal process as we are doing right now. If we discover later on that those who gave the orders are part of the higher levels of the government in Saudi Arabia, then that's a bridge where we're going to have to wait to see if it opens or not. For now, what we're doing is exactly the thing we need to do, a very balanced, not to go political when the case is legal at this point in time.
If the evidence does evolve to the point where it's pretty clear that these orders came from the Crown Prince, then would it be in our rights to request that he's demoted in some form or fashion?
That's the discretion of governments. This is an act of government. If we decide that that decision is as important as maintaining the relationship or more than maintaining the relationship, this becomes calculations, because the case is not treated under our legal system. It's not in a federal court here or Supreme Court here. It's in Saudi Arabia. So at this point in time, it would be really a political decision to be made by the administration, of course, in consultation with the Congress.
In the meantime, it feels like this is somehow also giving Turkey an opportunity to redress some of the issues and some of the animosities that we face with them as well. They returned the pastor to us, and it feels like something is thawing there. Could that be a good or, somewhat positive thing that comes out of this?
Any relaxation with any country that considers itself as an ally to us is always good. But again, as we've heard from some reporting, the administration is looking into the case of a political exile, a leader, a politician who is the enemy of the ruling party in Turkey. We also, in this case, have to be very careful. We need to review legally. We need to make sure that there is the judicial aspect to it and not react politically only, because we have to be careful. There are so many other cases of governments around the world who want us to do things. If we have a jurisprudence, if we have a case that we open and engage in, this could open all the other cases.
I guess it's the viciousness of this particular incident that's captured the world's imagination.
Yes, absolutely.
And it's put the magnifying glass on how we respond to it as well. Dr. Phares, always appreciate it. Thank you.